The Galactic Council Citadel never slept. It rotated in perfect silence around the neutron star, its vast rings layered with chambers where decisions older than most civilizations were still obeyed without question. To the Council, permanence was proof of wisdom. Humanity stood at the center of the main assembly ring, represented by a single projection amid hundreds of towering alien forms. Some were physical, others holographic, some little more than shifting light and sound. All of them looked down, literally and figuratively. Admiral Elias Rourke kept his hands clasped behind his back. He wore no medals, no ceremonial uniform. Just the plain black of Terran command, sharp lines, no ornament. He had learned early that ornament invited dismissal. High Arbiter Outrun floated forward, supported by a halo of gravitic light. His species resembled layered crystal wrapped in living tissue, translucent and ancient. When he spoke, the chamber quieted, not out of respect, but conditioning. "Humanity," Outrun said, his voice echoing through translators tuned to every known cognition pattern, "has expanded too quickly." A ripple of agreement moved through the chamber. Appendages twitched. Bioluminescent skins dimmed and brightened in approval. Rourke did not respond. He waited. Interrupting a High Arbiter was considered a breach of protocol. Humans had learned protocol well. For 3 centuries, Outrun continued, the Council has tolerated Terran growth. We welcomed your trade, your technology, your adaptability. A pause. But adaptability, when unchecked, becomes instability. A council delegate from the Virex Collective leaned forward. You colonize systems faster than projected models allow, it said. Your populations rebound after losses that would cripple other species. This is unsettling. Rourke finally spoke. We rebuild because we have to. Soft laughter rippled through several sections of the chamber. Outrun raised a limb. Silence returned. Admiral Rourke, your species was admitted under the containment doctrine. Limited expansion. Regulated borders. Council oversight. We've complied with every clause, Rourke replied evenly. Our fleets have never crossed a restricted boundary. Our weapons exports are logged and monitored. Our colonies are registered. Yet your presence now dominates 12 strategic corridors, Outrun said. Corridors the Council deems too important to remain under unilateral human control. Rourke felt the familiar tightening in his chest. This was the moment. He had rehearsed it. He had hoped he would never need to say the next words. Those corridors were settled legally, he said. We paid for them. Bled for them. Lost civilians establishing them. A regrettable cost. A delegate murmured. Rourke's jaw tightened. Not to us. Outrun's glow intensified slightly, a sign of irritation. The Council has voted to reassign governance of those systems. Enforcement fleets will assume control within one standard cycle. The chamber was silent now. Not anticipation. Finality. Rourke let a breath out through his nose. High Arbiter, that action would violate the Sovereign Security Accord. The Accord allows corrective intervention, Outrun replied. Your species lacks the longevity to understand long-term stability. This is for the greater good. For whom? Rourke asked. Several delegates shifted. The question was not supposed to be asked. Outrun studied the human projection, facets of his form refracting light. For the galaxy. Rourke nodded slowly. Then hear this clearly. Forced seizure of human territory will be interpreted as an act of war. The words hung in the air. Then the chamber reacted. Some delegates emitted sounds of amusement. Others signaled disbelief. A few showed open irritation. War? Said the Virex delegate. With whom? With us, Rourke answered. Outrun's tone softened, patronizing. Admiral, humanity has never engaged in total interstellar war. Your fleets are untested. Your psychology is volatile. This posturing serves no one. It's not posturing, Rourke said. It's a boundary. The High Arbiter dismissed the statement with a subtle gesture. Your species confuses emotional intensity with capability. The Council has contained far older and stronger civilizations. Rourke met his gaze. And how many of them survived that containment? The question earned a sharp spike of disapproval signals. Southren's light flared. This session is not for philosophical debate, the arbiter said. The vote stands. A glyph appeared in the center of the chamber. One by one, symbols aligned. Unanimous. Rourke felt something settle inside him, not anger, not fear. Certainty. Then humanity formally records its objection, he said. And its warning. Southren turned away. Noted. The projection began to fade. High Arbiter, Rourke said, stopping the process. Protocol be damned. Southren paused, visibly displeased. Speak. You believe we grew quickly because we are reckless, Rourke said. You're wrong. We grew quickly because we plan for loss. Because we assume failure. Because we prepare for the day diplomacy fails. The Arbiter's facets dimmed slightly. You are done. The connection severed. The chamber dissolved into motion as delegates departed, already discussing logistics, enforcement quotas, acceptable casualty thresholds. To them, the matter was resolved. Light years away, in a quiet Terran command room, Rourke stood before a wall of dormant displays. Officers waited behind him, reading his posture the way sailors read the sky. They voted? One asked. Yes, Rourke said. A pause. And? Rourke turned, his face unreadable. Initiate Protocol Sentinel. Level 1. Several officers stiffened. That's preparatory, one said carefully. Not retaliation. Correct, Rourke replied. We're not at war. Yet, someone muttered. Rourke didn't correct them. He looked at the star map as systems flickered to amber, at risk, not lost. Human space, still intact. Still patient. They think restraint is our default state, he said quietly. They think we're like them. He straightened. Let them. The lights dimmed as long-range sensors activated across human space, listening, calculating, waiting. The Galactic Council believed it had just preserved order. Humanity had just begun preparing for the end of it. Council enforcement fleets arrived without banners or warnings. They slipped into human space under the neutral designation of peacekeepers, their hulls painted in the dull whites and blues of authority rather than threat. To the Galactic Council, appearance mattered. Violence wrapped in procedure was still considered order. The first system fell silent before anyone understood what silence meant. Civilian traffic was halted. Jump lanes were locked behind encrypted council codes. Communication relays were seized and throttled, messages delayed just long enough to fracture coordination. No shots were fired at first. That restraint was deliberate. The Council preferred pressure that felt administrative rather than hostile. On the colony world of Hestara, cargo pilots waited in orbit with holds full of food they were suddenly forbidden to unload. Hospitals rationed power when external grids were temporarily reallocated. Schools shut down because orbital weather arrays, now under Council control, stopped updating. When protests began, Council envoys arrived to explain that compliance would restore normalcy. It's not punishment, one envoy said to a crowd gathered beneath a flickering holoscreen. It's correction. Admiral Elias Rourke watched the feed in silence. Around him, Terran Command tracked dozens of similar situations unfolding across human territory. Each was minor in isolation. Together they formed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. They're strangling us, a logistics officer said. Slowly. They believe we'll fold before it hurts, Rourke replied. Human fleets remained in holding positions, weapons cold, shields passive. Evacuation corridors were opened wherever possible, even when Council patrols shadowed the transports at uncomfortable distances. On the mining station K-47, a human captain hailed a Council cruiser that had docked without permission. This is a civilian facility, she said. You're interfering with life support. The alien commander's response was calm, almost bored. Life support remains within acceptable parameters. For whom? For the Council, the voice replied, and the channel closed. That night, the station lost gravity for 43 seconds when its stabilization ring was powered down for inspection. 3 people died. The report classified it as an unfortunate technical side effect. At Terran Command, the casualty list grew line by line. No names yet. Just numbers. Rourke convened a restricted council of human leadership. Generals, scientists, civilian representatives. The room was small by design. Decisions made there echoed outward. They're testing limits, said Director Hahn, her voice tight. Waiting to see when we push back. And if we do? Asked another. Rourke leaned forward. They escalate. Then we should escalate first. Someone snapped. Hit their fleets before. No, Rourke cut in. We don't fire the first shot. A murmur of frustration moved through the room. Why? Asked Governor Pell from the frontier colonies. My people are rationing oxygen. Because the first shot defines the story, Rourke said. And stories decide who stands with us when this breaks open. Outside the room, human space continued to strain. Supply chains twisted into knots. Medical shipments were delayed for inspections that never ended. Council patrols recorded everything, confident in their immunity. Then came the protests. Unarmed. Coordinated. Desperate. On New Carthage, thousands gathered outside a council-administered port, chanting for access to food shipments. Council drones hovered overhead, broadcasting dispersal warnings in 23 languages. A human negotiator stepped forward. They're civilians, she said into an open channel. Let the aid through. The response came from a fleet liaison. Crowds of this density are a security risk. We can clear a corridor, the negotiator said. Just give us. The drones fired stun pulses into the mass of people. The crowd broke. People fell. Panic rippled outward faster than any broadcast. No one died. That was the point. The council considered the response exemplary. Rourke watched the footage once. He didn't replay it. Instead, he authorized the final diplomatic attempt. A message was transmitted to the Galactic Council Citadel, routed through every official channel. It was not emotional. It was not theatrical. It was precise. Humanity demanded an immediate cessation of enforcement actions against civilian infrastructure. Restoration of trade access. Joint oversight rather than unilateral control. A timetable for withdrawal. And one final line. Continued action will result in consequences beyond Council projections. High Arbiter Outrun convened a brief response session. The human message was read aloud, stripped of tone and context. A threat, said one delegate. A bluff, said another. Outrun raised a limb. Human psychology relies on escalation through rhetoric. They seek leverage. Do we grant concessions? A junior delegate asked. The arbiter's glow hardened. Concessions invite precedent. The reply sent back to humanity was short. Enforcement will continue until compliance is achieved. 2 days later, Council Command authorized a demonstration of resolve. The target was an orbital habitat over Lisa Prime. Civilian. Overcrowded. Symbolic. Council analysts predicted minimal fatalities. The habitat would be disabled, not destroyed. Power systems neutralized. Life support would degrade slowly, forcing evacuation under Council supervision. It was, by their standards, humane. The strike came without warning. Precision energy lances cut into the habitat's outer ring, severing thermal regulators. Backup systems kicked in, then failed when Council jamming disrupted synchronization. In the chaos, evacuation pods launched blindly. 2 collided. 1 drifted powerless into the planet's gravity well. By the time the Council fleet withdrew, the habitat was dark. Casualty estimates climbed as human rescue ships raced past Council patrols that did nothing to assist. Rourke stood in the command center as confirmed deaths appeared on the display. Not numbers anymore. Names. No one spoke. Finally, a young officer broke the silence. "Admiral, they say it was an acceptable outcome." Rourke closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had changed, not hardened, not broken. Focused. "Send all commanders to emergency channel," he said. "Sir?" someone asked carefully. "Are we escalating?" Rourke looked at the map of human space, now bleeding red where amber once glowed. "No," he said. "We've been escalated against." He straightened, voice steady, carrying to every corner of the room. "And restraint has run its course." Across human territory, dormant systems began to wake. Not weapons yet. Not fleets. Something older. Something patient. The Galactic Council believed it had delivered a lesson. Humanity had just learned one of its own. The news reached Earth before the debris finished burning through Lisa Prime's atmosphere. Human networks carried the footage unfiltered, the shattered ring, the drifting pods, the silent dark where a city had been. No commentary. No music. Just reality, raw and unedited. Admiral Elias Rourke stood alone in the observation gallery as the final casualty confirmation arrived. 4,612 dead. Another 2,000 unaccounted for. The numbers meant nothing anymore. He had read too many names. Behind him, Terran Command waited. No one interrupted the silence. They understood its weight. "They classified it as proportional," Director Hahn said quietly. "Council Command released a statement an hour ago." Rourke nodded once. "Of course they did." A tactical officer stepped forward. "All rescue ships report Council patrols maintain passive stance throughout the incident. No interference. No assistance. They wanted witnesses," Rourke said. "Fear spreads faster when it's observed." He turned from the viewport. The stars beyond the glass felt distant, indifferent. Humanity had once believed space was freedom. Now it felt like a cage with invisible walls. "Begin full recording," he said. The room stiffened. "This session is classified beyond Council jurisdiction," Rourke continued. "History will need it." He took his place at the central table. Faces filled the surrounding displays: fleet commanders, civilian leaders, scientific directors. Some looked furious. Others hollow. Rourke didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We have exhausted every diplomatic avenue," he said. "We complied. We absorbed pressure. We protected civilians while they targeted them. The Council calls this containment." A governor interrupted. "Call it what it is." Rourke met her eyes. "It's subjugation." Silence followed. Not disagreement. Acceptance. "Our restraint was interpreted as incapacity," Rourke said. "Our warnings as noise. That ends now." A fleet commander leaned forward. "Are you authorizing retaliation?" "No," Rourke replied. "I'm authorizing transition." He gestured, and the star map shifted. Council fleets appeared as static clusters. Human assets flickered into view beneath them, layered and dormant. "For 3 centuries, we planned under the assumption that one day, someone would decide we were too dangerous to exist freely," Rourke said. "Not because of what we did, but because of what we could do." Director Hahn exhaled slowly. "Sentinel Protocol." Rourke nodded. "Alters." A murmur ran through the displays. A scientist spoke up. "That doctrine was never meant to be fully deployed. It was meant to be survivable," Rourke said. "So we will survive." He stood. The movement felt ceremonial, though nothing about this moment was tradition. "As of this moment, humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council treaties, accords, and enforcement structures," he said. "We no longer recognize Council authority over human space." A pause. "And?" someone asked. Rourke's voice hardened. "We consider ourselves at war." The declaration rippled outward at light speed, transmitted across human-controlled relays, unencrypted and unmistakable. There was no speech. No flourish. Just a single sentence, recorded and archived. The Council's response took less than 3 minutes. Emergency channels lit up across Terran command. Alien envoys demanded clarification. Council representatives threatened sanctions that no longer mattered. High Arbiter Zouthran appeared on a priority channel, his crystalline form sharp with restrained outrage. "This is irrational," the Arbiter said. "You are reacting emotionally to an unfortunate outcome." 4,000 civilians, Rourke replied. "Unfortunate is not the word. You are escalating beyond acceptable parameters," Zouthran warned. Rourke leaned forward. "You don't define acceptable anymore." The Arbiter's glow flared. "If you proceed, you will face the full corrective force of the Council." Rourke nodded. "We assumed as much." The channel closed. Moments later, Council fleets began to maneuver, formations shifting into what they considered combat posture. They moved carefully, deliberately, following doctrines refined over millennia. Human systems responded differently. Across deep space, long dormant platforms powered up. Not warships, networks. Sensor webs unfolded, mapping Council movements in real time. Algorithms adjusted, learned, adapted. The first human strike did not target a ship. It targeted coordination. Council fleets found their communications distorted, then severed. Navigation data desynchronized. Command hierarchies collapsed into isolated units, each acting on outdated information. A Council captain broadcast a confused hail. "Human vessels, you are interfering with authorized operations." The human response was immediate. "Correct." Precision followed. Human strike craft slipped through defensive gaps that should not have existed, disabling propulsion systems with focused bursts. No explosions. No debris. Just drifting ships, suddenly powerless. Council commanders demanded retaliation. Weapons fired into empty space where targets had already moved. "They're not fighting us," one alien officer reported in disbelief. "They're dismantling us." At Terran command, Rourke watched the feeds without satisfaction. "Hold to Phase 1, he ordered. "No civilian targets. No pursuit beyond designated systems." A junior officer hesitated. "Sir, we could press the advantage." Rourke shook his head. "Not yet. We're teaching, not destroying." Within hours, half the Council's forward enforcement fleets were immobilized. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the supposedly restrained species executed a campaign of flawless disruption. Zouthran convened an emergency council session. Panic crept into voices that had never known it. "They are exceeding predictive models," a delegate said. "They're adapting in real time," another added. "Faster than simulation allows." Zouthran said nothing. For the first time in his long tenure, uncertainty fractured his composure. Back in human space, Rourke recorded a final transmission. It was addressed to the Council, to neutral systems, to anyone listening. "We did not choose this lightly," he said. "We chose it because you left us no alternative. This war will end when you understand one truth." He paused. "We are not dangerous because we fight. We are dangerous because we learn." The message ended. Human fleets held position, surrounding but not striking further. The galaxy had expected defiance. Instead, it witnessed something far worse. Humanity had chosen war, and chosen how it would be fought. The war did not spread like fire. It spread like silence. Across the galaxy, Council-controlled systems began to fail in ways no doctrine had prepared for. Trade hubs went dark without a single shot fired. Defense grids remained intact yet useless, waiting for commands that never arrived. Fleets sat idle, crews staring at consoles that showed nothing wrong and everything broken. Humanity did not announce each move. It didn't need to. Admiral Elias Rourke watched the pattern unfold from Terran command. The map no longer flashed with alarms. It bled slowly, system by system, as Council influence collapsed under its own complexity. "They're losing cohesion," Director Hahn said. "Member states are pulling back their fleets." "Self-preservation," Rourke replied. "It always wins over loyalty." A transmission arrived from the Kalari Union, one of the Council's oldest allies. The alien ambassador's voice trembled through the channel. "We request neutrality," the ambassador said. "We were never consulted about enforcement actions against your people." Rourke answered without hesitation. "Neutrality will be respected. Withdraw your assets and cease cooperation with Council Command." The channel cut. Minutes later, Kalari's ships powered down their Council transponders. That was the beginning of the end. Within days, dozens of species followed. Not because they sympathized with humanity, but because the Council had promised protection and failed to provide it. Human operations didn't target populations. They targeted assumptions. The idea that authority equaled safety dissolved fast. High Arbiter Outrun convened the Council in emergency session, the Citadel vibrating faintly with stress fractures from overworked systems. The chamber was half empty. Delegates who once filled it with confidence now appeared as flickering projections, distant and afraid. "This is unsustainable," one delegate said. "Our fleets cannot coordinate. They are isolating us," another added. "We cannot respond." Outrun's form shimmered, light bending sharply around his crystalline structure. "They are violating every principle of regulated conflict," a voice answered from the chamber's center. "So did you." Humanity's signal cut through the Council's secured channels with surgical precision. Admiral Rourke appeared, standing alone against a dark background. No flags. No emblems. "How did you breach this channel?" Outrun demanded. "You built systems assuming no one would question them," Rourke said. "We questioned them. This aggression must stop," Outrun said. "You are destabilizing the galaxy." Rourke's gaze was steady. "You destabilized it when you decided some lives were acceptable losses." The Arbiter's glow dimmed, then flared. "You could have complied." "We did," Rourke replied. "Until compliance became extinction by procedure." Silence spread through the chamber. Several delegates lowered their sensory appendages, gestures of shame in their cultures. Outrun tried again. "If you continue, countless civilizations will suffer." "They already did," Rourke said. "Under your governance." He leaned closer to the projection, voice calm but absolute. "This war ends now. Not with your victory. With your surrender." Outrage surged through the chamber. But beneath it was something new, fear. "You overestimate your leverage," Outrun said. Rourke gestured. The display behind him shifted, revealing live feeds from across the galaxy. Council shipyards inactive. Enforcement fleets immobilized. Communication nexuses silent. "We limited ourselves for centuries," Rourke said. "By choice. To fit into your system. To prove we could be trusted." He paused. "That restraint was never a limitation. It was a courtesy." Outrun's light fractured, patterns breaking as realization set in. "You prepared for this," the Arbiter said softly. "Yes," Rourke replied. "Because history taught us something you forgot." "And what is that?" Outrun asked. "That peace enforced by hierarchy isn't peace," Rourke said. "It's patience. And patience ends." The Council chamber erupted into argument. Delegates shouted across channels, alliances collapsing in real time. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others begged for protection that no longer existed. Rourke waited. He had learned that silence was often the final pressure. Eventually, Outrun raised a limb. The chamber quieted barely. "The Council will suspend enforcement actions," he said. Each word seemed to cost him. "We will recognize human sovereignty." "That's a start," Rourke said. "And what do you demand?" Outrun asked. Rourke did not hesitate. "Dissolution of unilateral council authority. An end to the containment doctrine. A new charter where no species governs another without consent." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The old order was crumbling aloud. Outrun closed his sensory organs, a gesture of profound concession. "If we agree, will you stop?" Rourke's expression softened, not with mercy, but with resolve. "We already have." The war did not end with cheers. It ended with signatures, transmitted across systems that were slowly coming back online. Council fleets stood down. Human forces withdrew to defensive perimeters, exactly as promised. Across human space, people watched the broadcasts in silence. There was relief. There was grief. There was no celebration. In the days that followed, Admiral Rourke walked through a memorial hall newly constructed on Earth. Names scrolled endlessly along the walls, illuminated in soft light. He stopped when he saw the first from Lisa Prime. Director Han joined him. "The galaxy is calling this a new era." Rourke nodded faintly. "They always do." "Do you think they'll remember?" she asked. "What happened here?" Rourke looked at the names, at the cost etched into stone and data alike. "They don't need to remember the war," he said. "They need to remember the lesson." "And that is?" He turned away from the wall, gaze lifting toward the distant stars. "That humanity doesn't seek dominance," Rourke said. "But we will never accept permission to exist." Beyond Earth, the galaxy adjusted to a reality it could no longer deny. Humanity had not conquered it. Humanity had forced it to understand them. And the old order, built on quiet submission, was gone forever.